When Nari's life started getting crazy, rumors spread that the Green Ruler was searching for his long-lost daughter. But here's the thing, he wasn't looking for his daughter at all, but a substitute. And Nari was his target. The Green Ruler, known for being arrogant and rude, asked Nari questions like he was interrogating her. He wanted to know how she knew his daughter was lost before she was even a year old. Nari thought to herself, how does he even know what his daughter's voice sounds like, or that she's a genius? It was all pretty suspicious. He told Nari that if she passed his test, she could live as his daughter for 5 years without any worries. But Nari wasn't buying it. She knew she was just a substitute, and he was just using her. He asked her about her hobbies, and she said reading. He seemed surprised, saying she was cultured beyond her appearance. Then he asked her age, and she guessed 10. He revealed his daughter was 11, and Nari wondered why he was asking so many questions. Next, he gave her a hard riddle to solve, which was pretty confusing. She had never heard of Mina before, but she thought she knew the answer. As she solved it, she thought about how she ended up in this situation. Nari's life had been pretty harsh. She was once a subject of a crazy scientist's experiments, and her memories disappeared as a side effect. She thought the scientist was her father and endured the experiments until she was 24. But she was just a vessel for the scientist's dead wife's soul. After the experiment, Nari woke up somewhere else. She had gone back in time to when she first entered the orphanage where the scientist sold her. Luckily, she had read newspapers and knew about the future. She saw the Green Ruler's name, Duke Shakal Aubrey, the second most powerful authority in the empire after the royal family, controls 50% of the empire's trade. Born as the youngest of 3 brothers in the ducal family, he became the head of the family by surpassing his brothers. Perhaps it was natural for him to become a ruthless and sensitive person to survive in the ducal family, where cunning is rampant. She snaps out of her thoughts when he asks why she's staring at him without solving the puzzle. "Oh, yes, I solved it," she replies. He seems surprised that she's already solved it and questions her. "You didn't cheat, did you?" Nari reveals other facts about him, including his weakness for his wife and his loyalty to the ruler of the Blue Moon, a fact not many people know. However, she's suddenly taken aback, wondering how she could possibly know that. Ever since she came back in time, it's been strange. She feels familiar with sights she's never seen before, and information about people naturally comes to mind. He stands up, saying, "All right, though I don't know how you solved it in such a short time," she remarks. "Well, I'm also a bit of a genius," he responds. "That's good." He also announces, "You barely passed," reminding her that he's smart too. However, he's already made the decision to adopt this girl. She's objectively cute. She thinks she was supposed to get the wrong answer. She has regressed to the past, but all she has is this shrink body. She wonders how something like a Duchess daughter role audition didn't happen in her previous life. She reveals that she died and came back to life 3 months ago. The experiment performed by the psycho kept hurting a lot, painful like death, so she wanted to give up and die. Later, she found herself in a forest, in front of a mother telling Lana that being adopted by a noble was an honorable thing. However, Lana expressed that she did not want her to leave. Nari wanted to know where she was. What was this? She remembered people said that after death, people couldn't feel anything, but for her, it hurt so much, like she was hit. She was sure she was dead. But still, she looked around and wondered where she was. Her vision was low, and there was this strange pain she had been feeling since earlier. Lana felt like a familiar name to her, but she had never heard of it before. Her mom just told her she would surely be a great lady. Nari realized it was the kind tone of voice used only for children who were adopted by nobles. However, she knew this orphanage was like hell. As an adult, her skin even melted on her face as an after effect of the experiment. She felt strong pain even when the wind passed by. The smell of the terrible drug was more fragrant than the smell of her rotting body. She looked at her tiny hands and realized she regretted it. She also remembered it definitely hurt a little while ago, but strangely, it doesn't anymore. She sees her long, flowing hair without any damaged areas, pure white skin, a little skinny but round and cute fingers, and realizes it is not a dream, and she is finally free, the freedom she longed for. She thinks maybe God took pity on her, and in a sudden burst of joy, she leaps into the air, her hands raised high. She believes it is a chance to start over. Suddenly, something is written on her left wrist, catching her eye. She wonders what it is and questions herself. Why? Why now are these lingering traces of the experiment? She can't help but ponder. She tries to convince herself it's okay to start over again. It's okay even if she doesn't have any power. The biggest reason she faced death in her last life was when an indescribable ancient language took over her entire body, which also means the trace of a terminal illness will eventually lead to death. Tears well in her eyes as she curses that psycho. She thought she was going to live a normal life this time. She whispers, "I'm doomed." However, she thinks if she's back in the past, that psycho is also alive, but he still doesn't know her. Right at that moment, she decides she's going to get revenge. Now that things are like this, she's determined not to die alone. She will destroy that person's laboratory and life. She's aware that first, she needs to win favor and get a letter of recommendation from the most famous nursery in the empire. There's a secret: children who get good grades can live under the patronage of nobles, while those who don't, including those with bad grades or disliked by teachers, tend to disappear, supposedly adopted. Determined to get good grades and receive support, she decides to no longer be stupid and obedient. She finishes her cooking and tells her teacher, who's gazing at her in disbelief, that all the dishes are done. When asked if she can help with anything else, she promises to become a good student who repays her teachers. The teacher is shocked, wondering how this child, who always scored low, has changed so much in just a few months. Nori wonders if she's among the teachers who give grades based on personal preferences. As she leaves, she bumps into someone and apologizes, but the man is rude, calling her dirty trash. Her face contorts in anger, and she replies that she can indeed talk to him, knowing he's part of Charlotte's sponsorship system, where the sponsoring noble's honor increases with payment and performance. The arrogant man asks if she can't even remember his name, and she warns him to be careful, as the Count kills people without remorse. A teacher intervenes, stopping the man from striking her. The teacher assures the man that she's fine, and Nori realizes they want to impress the cloaked figure behind them, probably a high-ranking person. When the teacher asks, Nori assures her she's fine, plastering a smile on her face. She thinks that when she gets support from a noble, she'll flatten the man's nose herself. The man surprises her by saying she should come with him for a while, and the teacher explains that she's the nominated child. Nori greets him respectfully, introducing herself as Anisha, but his reaction is cold, ignoring her and asking the teacher if she taught them noble manners. The teacher assures him they train them for sponsorship and service, but he asks Nori how she knew he was a noble man. Nori thinks because of his overbearing tone and the quality of his robe, which looks good, but she's aware she can't say that. She responds that the way he walks and talks looks so graceful. He says, "Is that so?" She thinks she only said this because she was wondering if he was a sponsor, but he's really self-absorbed. When she looks at the purple eyes that peek out, she thinks of them as mysterious yet pretty. Now that she thinks about it, she recalls the teacher saying he nominated her. The teacher tells her it's not polite to make guests wait, so she should follow. She decides to follow them for now. Once he settles down, the teacher requests him to please sit, and tea will be served shortly. Then, she declares that she should introduce the child again. Nari thinks this is the first time she has seen Teacher Arena with such low altitude. However, he dismisses her, telling her the introduction is done, so she should leave now. The teacher is confused and claims regarding the counseling's adoption, but he cuts her off, asking when did he say he was adopting? He tells her he is the one making the decisions and judgments, so she should go out now. Nari realizes this is the first time someone has behaved like this to the proud Teacher Arena. Teacher Arena is the most discriminatory of all the teachers. She was a person who was proud of the work done at this orphanage and is also the most pushy teacher to her and other ordinary kids. Nari cannot believe a teacher like this would humble herself. She is jolted out of her thoughts when someone calls her name. Suddenly, she finds herself embraced by the teacher, who whispers in her ear with a menacing tone, warning her to never behave rudely toward guests. Nari is aware she's taking out her anger on her because she is the easy one. Her expressions remain unaffected as she assures her teacher she will. The teacher tells the Duke if he ever needs anything, just to call for her, and leaves. After that, Nari clenches her fist, trying to calm herself, telling herself it's fine. She should be a good kid who can solve everything. She wonders if she can smile like that when she gets stabbed in the back by her. However, her eyes are impossibly wide, reflecting a crazed expression on her face. She feels frustrated and irritated, reminding herself she should pretend to be cute. The Duke makes himself comfortable. She thinks he is disgusting. He tells her to sit down as well. Now that he has taken off his cloak, her eyes widen in surprise when she looks at his long green hair and purple eyes, a rare combination and beautiful appearance. She thinks it's amazing, but there's something about his face. Amusement is evident in his eyes as he exclaims. She thinks he is disgusting. Suddenly she feels shocked. She thinks this is without blood, tears, or misfortune, a rare genius with a sharp tongue and the worst personality. It is her first meeting with the damn Duke Xiao Aubrey. Later, he tells her they should get going. As she's sitting in the carriage, looking outside, she wonders if she seriously gets going like this. What about adoption documents? A month of training before adoption, he asks her if she is disappointed. She replies, "No, I'm not." She thinks he did not even give her time to think about it. As an opponent to another opponent, she needs to think about it first. She believes obviously this man will die. If not, the family may become extinct, but it's not like they're playing a time bomb game of who explores first. She then tries to recall why the man had died. After a moment of contemplation, the memory finally comes back to her. After his sick wife died due to his sense of loss, he attended a hunting competition hosted by the imperial family. The magic power went out of control and almost killed the royal family. In the end, this man was the most followed and liked ruler of justice, the head of the Argo family, Elf, killed by Duke Argo. After that, the power of Rust was considered evil and was sealed away. The whole family was wiped out, but then the story picks up again when a female proton with the power of Rust appears again. She is surprised how she is aware of all of this and wonders if it is the side effect of the experiments. After the experiment, a lot of strange things happen. She muses, perhaps she developed some kind of recognitive power. Her gaze fills with sadness as she thinks that as funny she died, came back to life, and returned to the past, but the after effects are still there. She checks her hands, thinking because it is time limited. The Duke, who is observing her, asks if she is called Anisha. She replies, "Yes." Before they arrive, he wants to tell her a few rules and precautions. He tells her to remember that from now on, she is not Anisha anymore, but Annette Aubrey. As she steps out of the carriage, he informs her that this is where she will live from now on. She gazes at the mansion in front of her, struck and amazed by its sheer beauty and grandeur. She thinks it's very grand, unlike her situation. Her gaze then falls on a woman who is looking at her with concern. She wonders who that person is. Her eyes fill with tears as she rushes towards her, realizing she must be Rosanna, who will become her mother, the first victim of the tragedy of Duke Aubrey. She glances at the Duke, who's looking at her very intensely, seeming anxious, as if he fears she might make a mistake. She wants to ask him if he thinks she wouldn't remember what he said in the carriage earlier. His words repeat in her mind. She should discard her name. Her name is now Annette Aubrey. She also remembers he told her that the moment they arrive at the mansion, she should address him as Father, and soon she will meet his wife, whom she shall call Mother. He demanded that she vow to faithfully fulfill the role of his daughter while portraying that character. She told him it would have been easier to just find his daughter. He revealed that, of course, he found her, but she was already dead, and he couldn't bring himself to tell his wife the truth. He seemed lost for a moment, but then quickly composed himself, telling her no more questions on that matter. He also told her there is an oracle. If she needed help when he was not around, she could ask her. From this moment on, she was the sole princess of the duchy for the next 5 years. She thought to herself that the threat of being sent back to the orphanage if exposed was just an added bonus. He asked her if she was only capable of saying yes, telling her their child was bright, innocent, and kind, since he was also like that, so it was only natural that his daughter would be too. Now, there was the problem. How did a child who had lived as an orphan for a lifetime react when they suddenly had parents? As the mother called for her, she ended up hiding behind the Duke, causing him to be surprised as well. Her eyes well up with tears as she whispers, "Mother!" The Duke looks at her intently, probably to find out what she's playing at. She thinks, why didn't she pay attention to such details earlier? A daughter finding her parents would not just be happy, she might be afraid of rejection. The grand surroundings would be intimidating and unfamiliar, causing fear. She would likely seek more comfort in the adults she has seen more. Her eyes flicker with sadness as she thinks she did not particularly want to know all this in such detail. Rosanna encourages her, telling her it is Mom, and apologizes because it took her this long to find her. She admits, Mom made a mistake, and wants to just hug her once. Tears fall out of her eyes as she rushes towards her mom. She thinks the embrace is warm, but why does her heart feel so turbulent? Is it because she's not meant to receive the warmth of the Duchess? Or is it because she imagines those hellish days just to shed tears? The Duke tells Rosanna the child must be bewildered. He softly tells her to look at him and reminds her he has to show her to her room, so she should go inside as she is still unwell. Annette thinks she did not know he was capable of speaking in such a soft voice. Rosanna looks at her with soft eyes and tells her to go and rest a bit since she would join her for dinner tonight. After Rosanna leaves with the maid, the Duke leans closer in front of her and exclaims, "She's really crying!" She tells him this is acting. He repeats, confused. "Acting?" She teases him, saying, "Yes, your daughter is bright, innocent, and kind, right? So isn't this what she should be doing?" He genuinely looks confused and comments, "How absurd." Then, he lets all the maids know that the princess has returned, and they should take care of her so that not a single hair is harmed. They are all quick to obey. She looks at them in awe. The Duke asks her why she is surprised. He offers her his hand and says it is her future home, after all. She agrees and takes his hand, thinking, even though it is unavoidable to have expectations, all these fantastic events are just for 5 years. The two identical-looking maids, Mary and Gold, greet her. Distracted, she responds with a vague, "Yes, yes," as her mind wanders elsewhere. She's anxious about already being separated from the Duke, but convinces herself she just has to do what she's told, and there shouldn't be any problem. The maids encourage her to talk informally to them, and she thinks it's a smooth start. But what would it mean? Panicking, she claims she can do it herself, so they can go now. They look at her with concerned gazes, but she thinks it's embarrassing for her to have them help her with her bath too. They insist, but she interjects, "No, no, really," while looking panicked. She wonders how she can get out of this. If she takes off her clothes now, she'll be caught with the crest. When the maid tries to insist again, she forces tears to well up in her eyes, looking lost, and says, "I'm embarrassed," in a small, vulnerable voice. Both maids get trapped in her act, asking if it would be okay for them to just draw the water for her, and they'll wait in the room. She sheds a tear or two, admitting softly, but she wants to get dressed on her own too. She thinks to herself, "I cannot tell the Duke this secret. If he finds out, I'll be immediately excommunicated." She believes there's no point in holding on to this shabby defect, that she might die with at any moment. She can hide it for now, but she's aware she needs to find another solution. This excuse won't work, especially after she gets used to this mansion. As she enjoys her bath, she suddenly recalls, "Now that I think about it, I do have that thing, don't I? Chameleon slime, an item invented by a certain confectionery scientist. If it's attached to someone's skin, it will change color to match the surrounding skin tone, just like a chameleon." She reveals many people bought it to cover burn marks or scars. If she uses that, she can easily hide these kinds of traces. The problem, however, is that it's not going to be released for a few more years, and she cannot wait for years. She thinks she needs to get it in at least half a year. She's aware she has to find that eccentric scientist and make it faster than the deadline she has set. Fortunately for her, she knows that scientist very well, the eccentric scientist who the crazy scientist, her abuser, hated because he was the genius of the century. Thanks to the crazy scientist's ego, she got to know what he likes and dislikes. Her lips press into a thin line, her eyes no longer hold any warmth, as she conspires against him, believing if she throws some bait, he is sure to bite. When she steps out into the room, Mary smiles brightly at her and asks if she's already done washing up. She demands to look around the mansion. Mary asks if she's tired. Doesn't she have to rest in her room? She assures Mary it's fine. After a while, as she reaches the dining table, she closes her eyes and sighs deeply because she barely managed to look around the mansion. And it's already dinner time. When she reaches the table, Gold informs her dinner will be ready soon. Annette thinks this mansion is so big that she almost got a 2-day tour. As she's eating, her mother calls out, drawing her attention. She looks at her mother and smiles. Her mother asks her how the food is. She exclaims it's delicious. She thinks about how, before the regression, she only had Eve's, and at the orphanage, the food was at the level of group meals. Rosanna offers her more desserts and passes them over to her, telling her to try these too. They're very sweet. Annette expresses her gratitude to her mother, looking happy and peaceful. She thinks she cannot eat at all, but it's really delicious. She thinks how happy she would be if she could eat like this for the rest of her life. She raises her eyes to look at her mother when her mother admits, "By the way, I know this is a shameless request, but would you be able to call me Mom?" She confesses she's heard Annette is very mature for her age, and she knows she cannot make up for the time they could not be together, but she would really appreciate it if she could call her something a little more comfortable, like Mom. Annette is quick to fulfill Rosanna's request and calls her Mom. Her mom looks up, meeting her daughter's gaze. So much emotion passes in her eyes. Annette assures her mom she'll try to call her Mom from now on and thanks her for not giving up on her. The Duke appears surprised, as if he hadn't anticipated this reaction from her. She notices his expression and thinks to herself that he looks surprised. She looks away, pondering that she was just doing what she had to do. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifts as the Duke, who has been watching his wife closely, sees her collapse and cries out, "Rosanna!" The Duke pleads with his wife to come to her senses and orders the maids to take her to her room. Annette watches everything in silence, realizing the situation is more serious than she thought. She thinks it's amazing she didn't collapse right away and notices the Duke's desperate expression. She asks Mary, without looking back, if she's there. Mary replies yes, she is. Annette instructs Mary to prepare hot water, sugar, and dry plant powder, knowing a way to calm the situation. She also tells her to roast the rye plants in a pan, dry them a little, then grind them into powder and bring them to her. Rye plants are common weeds but also an important ingredient in treating diseases. Mary responds, "All right, I'll prepare it right now." Annette grins, deciding to play the innocent and bright genius. As the Duke helps her sit down on the bed, he asks his wife if she's coming down. She says yes but is worried about how surprised Annette would be. She confesses she thinks she cannot be a good mother. The Duke looks genuinely broken when she says things like that and requests her not to say such things about herself. They both look up when Annette calls out to her mother, standing nearby holding a cup in her hand. She tells her mother she has brought her some medicine. The Duke is confused, asking what medicine she's talking about. Annette ignores him and walks past, stopping in front of her mother to offer her the cup and telling her to drink it. The Duke glares at her, unable to control his anger, and ends up screaming at her, his face flushed with rage, demanding to know how dare she treat Rosanna that way after he brought in a child of unknown origins and uncertain whereabouts. She just smiles at him in return, and once again, he is shocked by her. She reminds him she is a genius who takes after him, right? Rosanna intervenes, telling her daughter she looks a little shaken up by the fight and says her daughter has given it to her. How can she not drink it? The Duke looks worried, But Rosanna takes a sip and states it's sweeter than she thought, a little bitter. Annette interjects, "It's delicious, right?" and wishes her mother a quick recovery before heading back to her room to rest. After she leaves, the Duke wonders what she's thinking about. Just as she steps out of their vision, she starts shaking her hands, trembling. She wonders what she's doing now, but tries to convince herself it's fine. Even if she made some mistakes, she won't be scolded or experimented on. She reminds herself she came here to do well, and there's no way she'll get sick because this isn't a laboratory. When someone calls her name, she glances up, startled. It's Maria and Gold, both looking at her with concern. She tells herself she should act like an innocent child who knows nothing and forces herself to smile, explaining she was just surprised because it was her first time being scolded by an adult. She believes she cannot show her anxiety. On the other hand, Rosanna demands to know why the Duke was so angry at her daughter. She reminds him she is her precious daughter, barely found. He argues weakly that she was trying to feed him something strange. Rosanna smiles, stating she brought it while thinking of her. How amazing and kind is she? She tells him she knows he's not used to it, but from now on, he cannot be so cold-hearted. She cups his cheek and asks for his answer. Reluctantly, he replies, "Understood." He then pauses, exclaiming that it looks like her coughing has stopped. Rosanna says he's right. It's easy to breathe, and she's not even feeling cold. This flabbergasts him because she never stops coughing this quickly. The Duke looked down at her cup, wondering if it really worked or if it was a coincidence. Annette had a face of certainty, but it couldn't possibly be that simple. Suddenly he orders Pedro to bring Mary and Gold. If anything unusual has happened they may know. He tells her to rest. When she feels comfortable, Rosanna slowly closes her eyes, reminding him to apologize to Annette, before falling asleep. The Duke is aware that this method is not good for the child or Rosanna either, but maybe the child can really cure Rosanna's illness. There's a reason why Rosanna, who was healthy, became ill. Around 12 years ago, the empire was in turmoil by anti-aristocrat factions, all caused by the emperor's stupidity. The previous emperor was the worst tyrant in history, luxury and pleasure, a cruel nature that enjoys war, conscripting commoners into the army. When money was short, taxes was constantly raised. The nobles had no choice but to increase the taxes they levied on to the commoners. Under this terrible rule, the people of the empire finally exploded, unending war, raises in taxes. Even when the nobles threatened them, the people of the empire had nothing to fear anymore. There were even nobles that removed the heads of the people of the empire, to strike fear into their hearts. This led to an uprising all over the place. It then turned into a cruel revenge, taking children. An incident that happened out of a desire for revenge. "I lost my child, so you should too." The number of children disappearing from noble families gradually increased. Among them was even Shackle Aubrey, a nanny who had been loyal to the family for a long time, lost her son to the nobles. She took his child away and he didn't see it coming. Then the only son of the prestigious Marquis is found no longer among the land of the living. The nobles led by the Marquis drew their swords, and the prince, who was only 16, met with a coup. With the anger of the people of the empire and nobles, the coup was successful. As the tyrant disappeared, the lost children began to return one by one. However, there were some children who could not. His daughter was one of them, and so was the son of the Argo family. Fortunately, the son of the Argo family was found not long after. Rosanna regained some of her vitality when she heard the news. With tears in her eyes, she held hope that their child is out there somewhere. But the Duke couldn't tell anyone. They found her charred remains. They said she was found charred wearing the family necklace they gave her. He felt defeated. How could he tell her, when he had just seen hope and vitality well up in her face, who was waiting for death? He kept it tightly hidden. He didn't want anyone to feel his pain. So he brought a girl with green hair, who was the same age as his daughter. He wonders if he could find their child safely, and being her back, could it really be like that? Having a loving, cute daughter, who calls him Dad, his hand starts to shake with anger. Since that child is a fake, the resemblance, the words. However, there is no doubt that the child might have been switched. Annette's eyes was the same light purple as his. Unless she underwent an experiment, there is no way her eye color could have changed. Later on, the Mary revealed the ingredients used to prepare the tea. He wonders if it's a folk remedy. The Duke questions what the child is doing now. Mary states she's back in her room to rest, but she also reveals that Annette seems scared, since it was the first time she was scolded by an adult. The Duke finds this annoying. Before leaving, he inquires if they know what kids like. Later he brings his daughter Desert. She was planning to write a letter to the old geezer scientist, but now she's hit by a barrage of deserts. She inquires what's all the deserts is about. He blushes, exclaiming he just picked it up. He asked how she's feeling. She responds doing great. She wonders if he's sorry for what happened earlier, and believe he's being at Cinnadere. She calls out to her father in a cute voice and ponders if she should act more like a daughter. She thanks him, because this is all her favorite things. She comments that he's the best. He suddenly freezes in place. She notices this and decides to eat after complimenting him again. He blushes, obviously enjoying the praise that keeps repeating in his mind. She is stunned, wondering how could it be so easy. The next day, she had stay up all night with a sugar boost. With her current ability, it is difficult to come in contact with the scientist. However, she needs to talk about business with the Duke first. It's been a while since she's arrived. She can't give orders as she's used to, and she doesn't have enough money to deal with a mad scientist. She plans to steal the idea from the mad scientist in the future. A new way to use magic stones. One magic stone can only have one attribute. If you put the power of fire into a magic stone, it becomes a fire magic stone. However, just by lightly touching this magic stone, you can create a magic stone with two effects. If you melt and combine water and fire magic stones, it is possible to create a new magic stone that creates warm water. She needs to score points with the Duke for her to do that. Since she was treated well, she'll return the favor. Suddenly, two maids grin as they eye her. One of them places their foot in her way, causing her to trip. With fake concern, the maids asked if she'd okay. They taunt her, saying she has to see and learn so she can hold her head high. One of them commented that she should have lived in an orphanage too. They say the status of the family has fallen, and a scout from another family has already arrived. Maybe she should go there, as she doesn't want to treat such a dirty child as her master. Covering her nose, Annette thinks no matter where she goes, there is always this kind of harassment. They expect her to cry and they're adults. She tells them she's not hurt. The maid gives her a half-baked apology. In a soft tone, she inquires if she's smelly. The maid responds, of course not. Annette then reveals she'll pass it on to her father. She also says she'll inform her dad that the maids will leave, because they didn't want to take care of her who grew up as an orphan. She asks if they're happy. They then respond that she'll be hated, especially since she wasn't looking where she was going. As a seller, this is a method of speaking that they've grown tired of hearing from a mad scientist. She shouts if they think she's being a pushover. The maids are shocked. Cold sweats start going down their face. Who is Annette supposed to be loved by? The butler, the head maid, the servants? Of course not. Only Duke and Duchess Aubrey. She exclaims that her father brought her there and inquires if she's doubting him. She's a genius, so she can tell her father exactly what happened. In other words, her father will not be fooled. So if they're thinking of causing trouble, they better stop. Her mother loves her and her father would never hate his own daughter. One of them arrogantly asks how does she know she's the real daughter. She questions if they'll continue doubting her father, so she will tell him everything. She walks away and comments, let's see who gets the hate. They call out to her, with a fake smile, asking for mercy and admitting they crossed the line, but it's too late to change their attitude so quickly. But she decides to make them beg. She comments with their bare mouths. Their smiling face is very annoying. They inquire what should they do. She explained there's a way to apologize to someone. Does she have to tell them that, or does she have to keep looking up at them? They get on their knees and apologize. Since their apology was well received, she decides to go and tell her father about it nicely. She just taught them to apologize, not that she would forgive them. Maybe she will feel like forgiving them if they kneel down on the future.